guys and the praise team over there. Thank you, Brother Jeff. Turn tonight to 2 Samuel chapter 21, if you would. And would you do this as we turn to 2 Samuel 21? Would you just, again, just pray right now and just say, Lord, tonight speak to me. That's why we're here, right? Hear from the Lord. Not here to hear from me, here to hear from the Lord. So ask the Lord to speak to your heart. I believe he wants to. I'm going to take you on a little journey. We'll go back a little ways, some years ago, and if I could take you to when this little boy was born, there's a couple things that you would have noted about him. One thing you would have noted is this was a big child, a big baby, a big bouncing baby boy. And he was bigger than most children. I don't know how much he weighed, but even when he was born and into his early stages, you could tell he was going to be tall and muscular and athletic. Now, another thing you would note about him is he had an odd name. Now, Jeff, I don't know if your grandbaby's going to have this name or not, but you can put it on your list, okay? Ishbabenob. Does anybody here have a child named Ishbabenob? I've been to Hall County many times. Never met anybody named Ishbabenob. That's the child's name, Ishbabenob. And Ishbabenob, when he was just a little toddler, he was coordinated and he was balanced, and you could tell he was strong. And when he was growing up, there was no Little League. There was no Pop Warner football. There was no hockey team. There was no baseball team. So children in this day who had these kind of physical and athletic gifts, they were taught to fight. If Ishbabenob were living today, I think he would probably either be an NFL player, or if you're into the Ultimate Fighting Championship, he'd be a mixed martial artist. And he would be good. Because in the day when he would fight, many times they would not just fight till you could pin somebody or till someone would submit, but they would literally fight to the death. He loved to do that. He was undefeated. From the time he would have been high school age, he was trained to be a warrior. Much more primitive time. It was not unusual for one community to invade another community and to plunder. Since it was a very poor time in history, and they would literally just rob people. So you had to train young men to protect your town, to protect your homeland. Ishbabenob was one of these young men. And so he loved to fight. And he would fight at the drop of a hat. He enjoyed it, mind you. But he was in the army of his community. There came an occasion where Ishbabenob and all of his fellow soldiers were engaged in battle against a neighboring community to the north. And as they were engaged in this battle, Ishbabenob found himself in hand-to-hand combat with the king of the opposing army. Now, that is significant. Maybe you have either played the game of chess or you have some familiarity with it. Well, if you go back and the object of chess is to what? What's the whole object? Capture the king. And if you capture the king, it don't matter what it's happened. If you capture the king, game's over. Checkmate. Well, this comes back from early thousands of years ago, that there was, in some situations, superstition and some belief that if the king died, that he was the sovereign, that he was God's chosen. And so if the king died, then God must have removed his hand. And it would not be unusual if a king died for an entire army to begin to flee in fright, thinking they were defeated. So Ishbabenob finds himself encountering the king of this opposing army. So you can imagine what's going through his mind. He's about to win a victory for his side. He's about to become famous. He's defeated the king because this king was quite a warrior in his own right. And so Ishbabenob, not having the weapons we're familiar with today, but more swords and spears, as he's coming at this king, the king, although he's a great warrior in his own right, he's no match for Ishbabenob. And Ishbabenob is struggling with him, and the king ultimately falls down onto his back, and Ishbabenob is within moments of striking a death blow to this king. And as this king lies on his back, I guarantee you I know what happened. Like when I preached about 2 weeks ago, I bet his life flashed before his eyes. I bet he thought about a lot of those few moments. I wonder if he thought about perhaps when he was a young boy, how he, while all his friends would be playing, it was given to him to keep the sheep for his father. He was a shepherd boy. And how when his friends were out playing, he was all by himself with the sheep.
And like children like to do, he liked to sing songs and make up songs, and so he would just sing them to the sheep. He was really quite talented, as a matter of fact. He wrote down many of those songs, and actually we still have those songs available to us a couple thousand years later today. Now that he remembered the day that he'd be out keeping those sheep and singing those songs, and one thing that happened when he was out with the sheep by himself, and his friends weren't around, even as a young boy, he began to develop a very close relationship to God. And he just grew as a young man to love the Lord and to be close to the Lord. So it's really amazing. And I bet as Ishbabinov is lying there and he thinks he's about to lose his life, or this king is lying to lose his life, I wonder if it went through his mind how one day he was out keeping the sheep and his daddy called him up to the house. It seems the preacher had come by. And God had sent that preacher, he was a prophet of God, and had sent him to anoint one who would one day be king. And as a matter of fact, when the preacher got there, he saw the oldest brother. And the oldest brother was tall and handsome and eloquent, and the preacher right away said, this has to be the king. But God spoke to the preacher's heart and said, hey, listen, you're looking at the outward appearance. I look at the heart. He's not the one. And so this preacher began to look at all the brothers. And the Holy Spirit spoke to him about none of them. Do you have any more boys, he asked? And the father says, there's one more out keeping the sheep. So you can imagine this kid about middle school age, about 11, 12 years old. He doesn't comb his hair. He's dirty. He's not been playing with the sheep. He looks like anything but a king. And I doubt he has the manners that his older brother does. Like he sits and, what's up? You know, he comes to, what's up? And he doesn't look like a king. And yet, this preacher says, son, one day, you'll be king. Now notice, not you'll be president, not you'll be governor. You see, if you're president or governor, that's temporary. 4 years, you got to get reelected. In 4 more years, and you're done. No, when you're king for a lifetime. This is a very humbling thing. And know that there's no Congress. When you are the king, your word is law. Your word is power of life and death. But he's lying there. This king's about to die. And I bet it goes through his mind one day, when after that, his brothers were off to war, but he was too young. And his father sent him to check on his brothers. So he left the sheep and went to check on his brothers. And to his surprise, when he got there, no fighting had been going on. And he asked his brothers about this. Why aren't we fighting? I mean, the enemy's here on our ground. Let's send them packing. And their brother said, hang on, you'll see what's going on. And the next morning, it's been going on for days and days, almost about 5 or 6 weeks. This giant of a man comes down, and he begins to send out this challenge. Listen, send your best man down here, he said, and we'll just go one-on-one. And if any of you can beat me, we will all become your slaves. However, if I can beat your best man, you become our slaves. Who will take that bet on? Nobody was willing. And so he began to curse and swear. And he began to curse their God. That made this young man mad. He loved God. He said to his brothers, how can you sit there and let him talk about God like that? Somebody go down there and shut him up. Of course, his brothers didn't appreciate that at all. You just came to sit and fight. You need to go back home. But the word got to the king that this young man was being very bold and was offering to go down and fight this man. Now somehow, and it had to be only by the power of the Holy Spirit, that it was in this king's heart to grant this young man to go down and take on this giant. And God gave that young man a great victory over that giant that day. And he became famous as a high school student. The only problem is this. That king who sent him out to fight, I don't really think he thought he would win. And there was a parade, and I bet as he's lying on his back and he thinks he's about to die, I bet he remembered when they had the parade, and they started singing, our king has killed thousands. This high school kid, he's killed tens of thousands. Oh man, that made the king so mad. How can they say this kid's killed tens of thousands? He's killed one. I'm the one that's killed thousands. And this king got very jealous. And I bet as that man is laying on his back and he's about to die, I bet he remembered when his friends went off to college. He did not. He could not. This king grew so jealous, he wanted this young man dead. So he didn't go to college like his friends did. He didn't get a job. He had to literally run for his life. And he began to surround himself with men who, like him, could fight so they could preserve his life. This didn't go on for a week or two or a month or two. This went on for over a decade. He was on the run from this king. Now, I bet as he's lying there, he's about to lose his life, he remembers the day when word came to him, and that king that was after him had died in battle. Matter of fact, that preacher that had saw him about 15, 18 years ago, back when he was a child, came back to him and said, today's the day. You become king. So here he is. He's become king. And now he's about to die this inglorious death at this heathen's hands named Ishbabenob. How many of you know the story of David and Goliath? Say it again. You do? How many of you ever heard the story of David and Ishbabenob? You just heard it. What do you mean? You just heard it. I just told you. You said, I've never heard that story. Where's that? Where did you get this in the Bible, by the way? You know that? There's an entire chapter devoted to the victory of David over Goliath, and you can imagine why, when we're victorious, we like to talk about it. There's only a few verses given to this situation here. Do you know that Goliath was not the last giant David faced? Look at me if you would, say, where do you get that? What's in the Bible? In 2 Samuel chapter 21, beginning in verse 15. When the Philistines were at war again with Israel, let's stop right there. The Philistines occupied the southern part of what we know as Israel. We're not sure where they came from. They came from somewhere across the Mediterranean and they settled there. And as you know, when you study the Old Testament, they were a thorn in the side to Israel for generations. Israel could never drive them out, although Israel outnumbered them. They could never defeat them. And one reason why, when they came across, they brought with them a technology that Israel did not possess. They knew how to mine. They knew how to get metals out of the ground and how to melt those down and shape them into farming instruments. But of course, if you can shape those metals into farming instruments, what else can you do? You can make weaponry out of it. You make swords and spears. So they had this superior technology. So how was weaponry? So although there were fewer in number, Israel didn't have this kind of weaponry. They didn't have this kind of knowledge or technology. If you were in Israel, if you had a sword, it's because you stole it or you won it or you bought it. They didn't make it. They didn't know really have the skill to do that at this particular time. But the Philistines were at war again. See, it goes on and on again with Israel. Remember, Goliath was a Philistine. This is later on. David and his servants with him went down. And down means, remember, where's the Philistines? They're south. They go down, they go south. They went down and fought against the Philistines. Now watch this. David grew faint. We're not sure why. We're not sure if it was an extremely hot day. Maybe it was summer. Maybe he had some kind of bug. You know, a flu bug or something. Maybe he hadn't eaten. Maybe the battle raged all and he was dehydrated or we don't know what's going on. But again, David's a warrior in his own right. He's defeating Goliath. But Ishbabenob, he's not matching up. Ishbabenob is defeating him. David grew faint. Verse 16, then, what's the next word say? I didn't make it up, did I? There it is. Ishbabenob, there's his name. Did Ishbabenob, I underlined it. Okay? Who was one of the sons of the giant, the weight of whose bronze spear was 300 shekels, who was bearing, notice this, a new sword. Now that's not unusual for a Philistine. They had the technology to do that. He had this new sword. Notice he thought he could kill who? David. So who's the king lying on his back and Ishbabenob coming in? Who's the king lying on his back? David. David's about to die. Ishbabenob has his number. Ishbabenob's a giant of a man born to a giant. And David's no match because David is faint. He's grown weary. Verse 17, but Abishai. Remember when David went on the run from Saul? He surrounded himself with people who could protect him. Abishai was one of those men. Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, came to his aid, and struck the Philistine and killed him. So you can see David on his back, and Ishbabenob is about to run him through, and David's looking with an eye, and he's seeing his life flash before his eyes, and all of a sudden Ishbabenob, it's like he just stops. And slowly begins to tumble. And standing on the other side of Ishbabenob is Abishai. And Abishai has run him through with a sword and preserved the life of his king, David. Then the men of David swore to him, saying, "Ye shall go out no more with us to battle, lest you quench the lamp of Israel." That's a prophetic statement, by the way, because David is not the lamp of Israel. Jesus is the lamp of Israel. But you know, if David had died, Jesus, humanly speaking, through Mary was his great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great grandfather. Jesus was the lamp of Israel. So they didn't realize they're speaking prophetically here. If you die, Jesus can't be born because, we know God can do what God will, but God had a plan. He laid it out. And through David, okay, that his nation would reign forever. So it's interesting here when you go through this text. I'll show you something here, just a little